Thank you to John Rivera for pointing that out to me. Shout out to my man, John Rivera. He just texted me and said that people couldn't hear me on YouTube or Twitter. So shout out to my man, John Rivera. He's actually going to be on the show on Thursday. Just did a live with him yesterday. So shout out to you, my man. You just saved my butt there because I muted my microphone. I always do that before the show. So thank you to John out there. He's the best. He is the absolute best. So thank you. So I'll go back. I hate to go backwards, but hey, I want to get out what I want to say here. For the Los Angeles Lakers, in a nutshell, Russell Westbrook is the problem. It is as simple as that. Westbrook and age. I don't want to hear about Frank Vogel. Frank Vogel wasn't the problem when you guys were winning a championship in 2020, or you guys were the #1 defense in basketball last season. That's what it is. And so, 5 points. What was it? Was it 4 rebounds and 6 assists? Yep, 4 rebounds, 6 assists, a -15 from the field. Come on, man. And benched in overtime. The team was better with him off the floor. For context, Westbrook was a -15. LeBron, the other night, +12. Anthony Davis, +9. The fit never worked. To the Brooklyn Nets aspect of things. They're on an 8-game losing streak. Kevin Durant's out. Probably won't be back for another 3 weeks. Certainly will be post-All-Star break because he's not going to play in the All-Star game. Jason Tatum was just named as a fill-in starter for him. 8-game losing streak. And for Kyrie Irving and James Harden, it has been an absolute disaster. And for Harden, I talked about Harden last week. I think he fits in Philadelphia. Matter of fact, I honestly, from the bottom of my heart, I think this trade is going to happen before the deadline on Thursday. I really, really do. I think we're going to get a James Harden for Ben Simmons trade. The only question is I'm hearing some of the discussions now, is Seth Curry going to be involved in a trade? And that's the only way that the 76ers would say, okay, or that the Nets would say, okay, we're good with this. But Kyrie Irving, the biggest criticism I've always had of this guy, and he is unbelievable. He's got the best handles of any player I've ever seen in my life. Y'all know I love Steph Curry. I loved AI. This guy's it. I saw a play last night where he fell down, kept his dribble, and that ended up being like a turnover or something. But the fact that he even kept the play alive is phenomenal. We all know what he is in clutch time. But my thing with Kyrie, it's a lot like with Russell Westbrook. He's a great player. Does that make him a winning player? And the answer is no. For example, Kyrie Irving's a much better basketball player than Jimmy Butler. But Jimmy Butler's a winning basketball player. We've seen that everywhere he's went. Chicago and Philadelphia and even Minnesota there for a hot minute. And obviously now with Miami, they got the 2 seed in the East, fighting with the Bulls for the 1 spot. But Kyrie Irving, when the Nets don't have him in the lineup this season, they got a record of 25-16. 9 games above 500. For context, that is 61% of their games. With Kyrie, they have a record of 4-8. Again, an 8-game losing streak. He wasn't there for all of those. They've won 33% of their games. So they're 1 out of 3 in the games that Kyrie plays. And what's concerning about that? He's averaging 24 in this losing streak in the games that he's played, which are obviously road games. That's the issue. That is the issue for Kyrie Irving. So, and this is why I said for the Nets, I'd trade Kyrie before I'd trade Harden. I'd try to keep him there as long as possible. I think the fit with he and KD, I remember his first game as a Net last year when I think they played the Orlando Magic, I think it was a home game. I was like, hey, this works. It's like they didn't miss a beat from a decade ago in Oklahoma City. But, and I've said this, what is Kyrie without the 3 years with LeBron? Put up really good numbers. Matter of fact, was an All-Star Game MVP in 2014. Put up good numbers his first 3 years in the league. Made 3 straight finals with LeBron. Left to go to Boston. Got traded to Boston. Forced his way out. Got traded to Boston. And the Celtics, when he got, I remember saying at the time, it was like late March when they announced Kyrie was out for the season in the playoffs. I'm thinking, oh, well, that just sunk the Celtics ship. No, they were a fourth quarter away from an NBA Finals against, they're obviously playing the LeBron. A fourth quarter away from the NBA Finals without Kyrie Irving. He comes back, Gordon Hayward also comes back, and they get bounced miserably by the Milwaukee Bucks in the second round, and Kyrie bolts for Brooklyn. And the Nets, with Kyrie, his first season there, with him, a record of 8-12. That is a winning percentage of 40%. Without him, a winning percentage of 51%, a record of 27-25. That's the bottom line with this. He's a gifted basketball player. Nobody is questioning that for a second. But in regards to can he help you win, are those stats meaningful? Again, may I reiterate, he's averaging 24 a game in this losing streak. So that's kind of my problem with the Lakers and the Nets. Age, I have now in Brooklyn, I have serious questions about Steve Nash, his ability to to adjust in games, obviously to manage the big personalities he has there. Steve Kerr had the quote. He may have taken it from Greg Popovich, but Steve Kerr had the quote years ago. He said that in the NBA, for the most part, certainly veterans, guys know how to play basketball. 10% is X's and O's. 90% is managing personalities. How well do you do that? Kerr, Popovich, even Budenholzer to a certain degree, and I've had my many concerns and complaints about Mike Budenholzer, Eric Spoelstra, Monty Williams especially. They're great at managing personalities. I don't think Steve Nash is. I think he was a great player, two-time MVP for a reason. Although I think Shaq deserved one of those, but that's another discussion for another day. The problem for the Nets is I have questions about their coaching. Their best player, Kevin Durant, is brittle. He has an injury history now, okay? He's struggled to stay healthy. Kyrie's not a winning basketball player, and even if James is there, we all know what he is in the playoffs. Okay, we've seen this movie over and over and over. We saw it last year and basically every year going back to about 2014. So I don't see either team getting to their conference finals. I think in the Western Conference, it's going to be Golden State and Phoenix. I said that back in October. In the Eastern Conference, I think it's going to be Milwaukee, and then either, Miami or Chicago. And I think they blow by Chicago. Miami, I'll give them a puncher's chance, but I'd still take the Bucks. So that's where I'm at. All right. So it is Super Bowl week. This is one of my favorite weeks of the year. It's a little bittersweet because it is, we're coming to the end of the the NFL season. But we got a great guest on the show. He is the host of Guido's Gridiron Blitz. Drum roll, please. Mike Guido's joining Carving Up Live. How you doing, Mike?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's great to have you on the show. So I will have to congratulate your Cleveland Cavaliers, first of all, on acquiring Caris LeVert.
Yeah.
It's great deal, especially if you came back from 20 on the team that you're trading him from. So just quick take before we even get to all the football stuff. What's kind of your take on the Cavs, and do you think? Okay, let's start with this. What to you would be a successful season for the Cavs? Because they're going to make the playoffs. Beyond that, what's going to be a successful year?
I mean, it's hard to say anything other than them making the playoffs this year with the kind of expectations they've had would be a failure. So I think them just making the playoffs is a victory for them, because again, they're still at the the moral victory phase. It's not like, all right, it's finals or bust or anything like that. Like, no, this is a rebuilding team. They're incredibly young. Them making the playoffs and making real progress as opposed to years past would be huge for them. I would love to see them win a playoff series, and I think their defensive ability can cause them to do that, especially if guys like Darius Garland are healthy, if Caris LeVert fits in, which I think he will. He's a decent shooter. I mean, he can really score. He's a 20-point-per-game scorer, so I'm assuming he will, but there's just nobody that can score in the paint on them. I mean, Evan Mobley and Jared Allen are just they're unbelievable inside. I mean, they gave Giannis fits. It's just you can't do anything with them. So I'm very happy with how the season has gone for them. I think it's really exciting. There's still a few missing pieces, I think, and if they get Colin Sexton back, and he's healthy next year, and they bring him back with this core, they extend Karis LeVert. Again, I don't know how realistic that is, but now you're looking at a legitimate, maybe perennial playoff team in the East that's up and coming and growing.
Yeah, I think you made a lot of good points, and that was something else I was going to bring up. I think it's a huge win for the Cavs to get Karis LeVert and not have to trade Colin Sexton. You traded Ricky Rubio, who was already out for the season.
Right.
I believe there was a draft pick in there. So, for the Cavs, it was a huge win, the trade, and certainly Indiana's got a ton of players that are going to be on the trade block. Karis LeVert being one of them, and he's in Cleveland now. So, congrats to y'all. Now to football. We're leading up to the Super Bowl, but let's talk about the guy who's been in 10 of them, and that would be Tom Brady. Your reaction to the retirement news? I'm not going to ask if it was the right decision or not. That's between Tom and his family. But what was kind of your takeaway from his retirement after one of probably the 3 or 4 best seasons of his career?
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely, believe it or not, I can't believe we're actually saying this, but somebody who's 45 years old, we're actually saying, oh, wow, we're surprised that he retired. Like, dude, guys that are 45 have been out of the league for 10 years. Like, that's the normal. But Tom Brady, look, as much as I have despised him, and I'll say it like this, I have playfully despised Tom Brady because I hate that he won all the time. I just hate it. Right? I'm a guy that believes in parity in sports. I'm a guy that believes that, listen, it sucks when a team can't win a Super Bowl in 35 years. You know what I mean? My Dallas Cowboys haven't won a Super Bowl in 26. So, it's getting to that point. But I playfully didn't like Tom Brady. So here's my thing on this. I obviously want to congratulate him on a great career. I'm not going to take anything away from him. I think it's really hard to argue that he's not the best player to ever play. However, again, my playfulness then turns into truth here. I do think that the league will be better without him. I just do. Because as far as that's concerned, you're opening the door for more of these young quarterbacks, for more teams. Like, it increases fan interest to me because your team now has a legitimate shot, right? Tom Brady was so great for the last 20 years that, like, listen, you had the chance. If you had one good season, that was your shot, right? Because it was either Tom Brady was taking you out or something along those lines, right?
Yeah.
I mean, now that Tom Brady's gone, I think it extends a lot of teams' windows. So congratulations to Tom Brady, but sayonara. Like, I'm happy, man. I really am. And listen, I'm happy for him too. He's made a ton of money. I mean, think about it like this too. How many people in America do you think have a better life than Tom Brady right now? He's got a gorgeous wife. He's got a great family, right? I mean, he lives in one of the most beautiful parts of the country.
Yeah.
He's an absolute icon. People are talking about him now as maybe the greatest athlete ever. Like, athlete. Not even NFL player, like athlete. And there's a real argument for that. So seriously, I'm glad that he's not in the league anymore because now we don't have to keep saying like, oh, well, you can't bet against Tom Brady. I'm happy about it.
Oh my gosh. So listen, that it was, for me, obviously, it was definitely bittersweet, obviously, getting to watch this guy. And for me personally, he was sort of a last of the superstar quarterbacks of me growing up as an NFL fan. You talk about the Manning brothers and Phillip Rivers and Breeze and Big Ben. So he was sort of the last of that group. So it's tough for me as a football fan. But, I mean, listen, the argument you brought up about him being the greatest athlete ever, I've said on this show, I think he's the greatest athlete in the history of American team sports. But in regards to, so you're saying about, and I think you do have a valid point about, it opens it up for the young quarterbacks, the Mahomes, Allens, the Joe Burrows, who's going to be in the Super Bowl in 6 days. You think, I mean, certainly in the NFC, I think it's about as wide open as it's ever been.
Yeah.
You think that is a benefit for the NFL and it's actually going to help the NFL, or it's just not going to hurt the NFL?
No, I think it's going to help the NFL because look, the reality is that if you are, and I get that, it may not even help it that much because football is America's sport, right? It just is.
Yep.
They own a day of the week. If you're a Texans fan, you're watching Texans football every Sunday. Okay. But here's the thing though. You're going to just attract more of those fans that give up on their teams, right? Those teams, those however many Buffalo Bill fans, right? And maybe they're a bad example because they're rampant up there, but those Buffalo Bill fans that just said, you know what, what's the point? We can't beat Tom. We really just have no future in this. You know, now you're bringing those fans back, right? I think it's more worthwhile for teams to experiment with their own personnel more. I think they can make better decisions in free agency. I think they can make better decisions in the draft now. I mean, I think it just opens up. And people are going to call me like Mike, you're reaching. But the reality is that Tom Brady being gone, I mean, this just plays to how much of a big factor he was in the NFL. You literally needed to plan how your team was built based on the fact of whether you were going to play Tom Brady that year, whether there was a possibility that you could have played Tom Brady in the playoffs. Like, it was one of those deals. So I think this opens up a world of opportunity. Maybe you see more teams take swings on quarterbacks in the first round, second round, something like that, just to get their guy, get a jump start in rebuilding. I think it changes the entire landscape of what the NFL is going to look like in the next, however long.
Yeah, and I think I said this on my show, for a guy, when Michael Jordan retired in 1998, there wasn't any real superstar yet at that time that was ready to kind of take the mantle, not up until, LeBron came into the league 5 years later. With, Tom Brady, great as he was, greatest quarterback of all time, I think you do make a good point. You do have as bad as many great young quarterbacks in the game today as we've had maybe in recent NFL history. So I think you bring us some good points there. Yeah. Now, to the guy who a year ago he beat in the NFC Championship game, that would be Aaron Rodgers. A lot of questions about whether he'll be in Green Bay. Is he elsewhere? Is he going to hang up the cleats? I think that's absolutely a possibility. That's honestly, the retirement is where I'm leaning, because I think from Aaron's perspective personally, Mike, he looks at, okay, I'm in an awful division. Okay, yeah. I'm basically, it's certainly with the NFC, the way it is now, I'm basically guaranteed the number one seed, because the NFC West is just going to beat up on each other. Dallas is not good enough to be the number one seed. And then in the NFC South, it's just, kind of a crapshoot now that Brady's gone. Right. So for Aaron, he's like, I did all this. I'm probably going to be the MVP again. And yet we went one and done in the playoffs. And, me personally, I think Aaron deserves a ton of blame for it. What's kind of your, are you hearing anything, sources wise? Where do you think Aaron ends up, or does he just say, I'm out?
Aaron Rodgers is very quiet when it comes to his, his future, right? I mean, even when they were having trouble last offseason, was he vocal about the problems they were having? Yeah. But was he vocal about where he wanted to go? Absolutely not. It wasn't a Russell Wilson situation where he literally came up with a list of teams that he wanted to get traded to. But it's for those reasons that you just said that I think could lead him to go back to Green Bay, because now that Brady's gone, the NFC South is a mess. Okay. Like, if you look at it right now, and unless there's a big change somewhere, okay, who's the favorite to come out of the NFC South next year? Atlanta? Like who's going to be the team to beat in the NFC South next year? There really isn't one. Dallas is running it back with the same coaching staff, pretty much the same roster. Do you really think that there's going to be much improvement there? No. You're right. The NFC West is going to beat up on each other. Now, again, San Francisco, I'm assuming, is going to get a little better. I think that the Rams could potentially get a little better. But again, you're right. They're going to beat up on each other. They're going to, it's going to be a lot of 3-3 in the division sort of things next year. And you can't imagine that Russell Wilson, even if he stays in Seattle, is going to come in last place again next year. I just don't think that that's possible. So if you really look at it, Green Bay is set up to have another 13-4, 14-3 season where they're the number one seed. They have another bye, and the NFC could actually look a little bit like a cakewalk. Like, it's for those reasons that I think that you can, that you could even make the argument that he's staying. However, I don't think that he's going to retire for that reason, but hear me out. I do think that there's a possibility that he goes to one particular place. I don't think he's going to go to, I don't know, San Francisco. He's not going to go to Tennessee, none of these other places that you've heard. I think the only place that he could go is Denver, and that's it. But the only issue is that he goes to Denver only if he cannot stand Green Bay anymore. If he cannot stand Green Bay, because think about it. You go to the NFC West, you got to play Patrick Mahomes twice. You got to play Justin Herbert twice. You got to play Derek Carr twice, right? Like, it's just,
that's what I've been saying.
And now when you go to the playoffs, right, you not only have to play Patrick Mahomes, you got to play Joe Burrow, you got to play Josh Allen, like you got to play Mac Jones. Where's the break? Like you don't have one. So I think my hunch is saying that it's going to be just like this offseason is going to be just like last one. We're going to have a lot of noise about where Aaron Rodgers is going to go, and it's likely that he's probably going to stay in Green Bay. Also keep in mind too, Green Bay isn't going to trade him. It's not like they're going to just let him go. You know what I mean? So I cannot see him wearing another jersey next year unless we find out new information in a month where it's just like the relationship is completely fractured and he will not play for them.
You make a lot of good points. And also I would add to the fact, and I brought this up a couple of weeks ago when I was talking about Aaron's future, is yes, if he did go to Denver, you're talking about those three, star quarterbacks. But in all likelihood, also you got to, keep in mind, he's probably going to have to take the show on the road during the playoffs. Right. This isn't Lambeau Field, which is one of the best home field advantages that we have in the sport. You're probably going to have to go to Buffalo, to Kansas City. And so I think for him, if he stays, I agree with that. I think the best option is Green Bay for all the reasons you mentioned. Weaker conference. There's certainly not as many superstar quarterbacks there as there is in the AFC, just in the AFC West alone. I will say this: not uncarving it up. Don't you ever put Mac Jones in that discussion with those other.
Mac Jones, Bill Belichick, I think they're still a tough playoff.
No, Belichick is. Belichick is.
I'm just saying, Mac Jones. Like I've said about Mac Jones, he does everything that Belichick needs him to do, and that's all. And that's it. That's all he needs.
Okay. All right. That's fun. That's fun.
He's not in the Josh Allen category.
Relax. No, Lord, no. We saw that in the playoffs.
I'm not even sure Mahomes is. Like, you want to talk about Josh Allen? I mean, Mahomes is unbelievable.
Yeah.
I've never seen anybody as physically gifted as Josh Allen play this sport. I just haven't. He's better than Aaron Rodgers. Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
Pure talent. He is better than Aaron Rodgers. And to be honest, I mean, Mahomes is a little bit more accurate with the arm, but their arm strength is incredibly similar. And Josh Allen can run for 900 yards a season. So you kind of gotta, have that conversation too.
Well, you know what Josh Allen is? He's a lot like, he reminds me a little bit of Cam Newton, but he's accurate. Like Cam's issue, even his MVP year, he wasn't horribly accurate with the football.
Yeah.
Josh Allen is every single season, his completion percentage has gone up from his rookie year when it was like 52%. It was awful.
Yeah.
But you look at the strides he's made. They signed him to a $40 million contract. He deserves every penny of it.
Absolutely.
And listen, I think Buffalo's going to get two Super Bowl titles when he's there. I think he's that special, even as great as the AFC is.
Hey, listen, now that Brady's gone, maybe that's true.
Especially, you don't have to run into Tom.
You're right.
To a team. Oh gosh, I hate talking about this team so much on the show. The Dallas Cowboys, our Dallas Cowboys. Boy, is there a lot more questions than there are answers right now. So obviously, we saw the news: Mike McDaniel getting the job in Miami, which means Kellen Moore's coming back. I was jumping for joy that when I saw Dan Quinn was returning to the team.
Mm-hmm.
However, Mike McCarthy is still there. Jerry Jones is still there. They will win the division. I'm not worried about Washington, Philly, or the Giants at all. My issue is this. You're running it back. You're going to lose some guys, whether it be Schultz, Curse, they could try to move DeMarcus Lawrence or Amari Cooper for cap purposes. Again, with Dallas, everything went their way this season. Their schedule wasn't horribly difficult outside of, a few games here and there. They won 5 of their last 6 going into the playoffs. They had a home game against a Jimmy Garoppolo of all quarterbacks.
Yeah.
You had a healthy roster. And those two teams a few Sundays ago looked like they were on, playing different sports. So what's kind of your takeaway on the Cowboys season, and what is there to be optimistic about in 2022? Because listen, I'm an optimistic guy. I can't find it.
So I will say this. I think the one thing to be optimistic about is I genuinely believe that Jerry Jones's frustration is legitimate, which means that there is change on the horizon, even if it's not this coming year, but the following year. So I think Mike McCarthy's got one more shot. If Mike McCarthy puts together the same season he did this year, he's gone. Okay.
Absolutely.
There's no way that you're going to run this back another time if you get embarrassed, because that's the reality of the situation. The Cowboys got embarrassed in the playoffs, and it wasn't because they lost. It wasn't because they lost. It was because of how they lost. And I'm sorry for the cliche, but 14 penalties, Bryson. I mean, like, that's not acceptable. It's not acceptable in a regular season game. Forget
Which,
about
by the way, they did that in a regular season game on the Thanksgiving Day against
they did. I know.
Raiders.
Oh my gosh. I was sitting next to my uncle who's a diehard Raider fan that day, and that was painful. It was painful. Now, granted, the Raiders also had 14 penalties, but again, besides the point. Anyway, I think if there is something to be optimistic about, this roster is incredibly good, and Jerry Jones is seeking change. That change to me translates to potentially Sean Payton. I don't know that. Okay. I don't have sources. I don't have any of that stuff. Purely speculation. I think that if Jerry Jones wants Sean Payton, he'll get him. Period. Here's the other thing, though.
Yeah.
Here's the thing to be pessimistic about. I think the biggest problem the Cowboys have, truthfully, and actually it's a combination of two things. First of all, Dak Prescott's overpaid by a lot. And I don't think he's a $35 million quarterback. I don't think he's a $40 million quarterback. I think Dak Prescott is more in the $29, $30 million quarterback range. I mean, look, there are like 4 quarterbacks in the league right now that I would pay over $35 million, right? Rodgers, Allen, Mahomes, and Russell Wilson, maybe. Like, those are the only guys I would pay anywhere near that. Joe Burrow, maybe when you get down the line. But the other problem is that the new trend in the NFL is Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, the Zach Taylors of the world. You're going to see Mike McDaniel now, Matt LaFleur, like these young, bright offensive coaches that are now, like, everybody wants one now. Everybody wants Sean McVay. The Cowboys are clinging on to the fact that Kellen Moore is their Sean McVay, and he just isn't. Okay? I think Kellen Moore is a bright offensive mind. I do not think that he's stupid. I don't even think he's a bad football coach. But if you're clinging on to the fact that Kellen Moore can be Sean McVay, he can be Kyle Shanahan, those guys are just another level of genius on the offensive side of the football. They just are. Okay, it's not like you can just take one guy. Okay, the next young offensive guy. I'm not even sure Mike McDaniel is that. I mean, Mike McDaniel's a really smart guy, and we'll see it. But like, you see, that's why Mike McDaniel got hired. And he came from the 49ers, right? He's under the Shanahan tree. Like, everybody is looking for this next thing, and the Cowboys are trying to convince themselves so much that Kellen Moore is of that ilk, and he just isn't. So I think that's really their biggest issue. So until they can overcome those, I think it's going to be it's going to be really disappointing, because my biggest fear as a Cowboy fan is that this roster is going to go to waste, and I feel like it will.
It's entirely possible. My thing is this: Burrow, Wilson aside, because I said on my show when Joe Burrow made it to the made it to the Super Bowl last week, I said,
right,
now that Brady's retired, I don't think any quarterback in the National Football League outside of maybe Russell Wilson could have taken a bottom, below average offensive line, a defense that's hit and miss. And you probably like Zach Taylor a lot more than I do. He's a decent coach. I don't think
he's a solid coach.
He's a solid coach. Listen, he doesn't screw it up. He's not, I haven't seen one game where I'm like, what the heck is Zach Taylor doing? But my thing is this for Dak. I agree with you. He's not a $40 million quarterback, and I'm the biggest Dak fan on earth. I would say he's around the 35, although I would pay, obviously, Russ, Rodgers, Allen, Mahomes, Burrow more than him. My thing is this: outside of maybe Burrow, what you've seen from the other young quarterbacks, the Mahomes. I mean, Mahomes has had Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy. I don't think we're ever going to know how good Dak is until he gets one of these guys. Because at the end of the day, if you have an elite quarterback pair with an elite coach, you can win a Super Bowl. It's as simple as that. Obviously, you got to trim the roster up the best you can.
Yeah.
But what I've seen from Dak is fairly accurate, good arm, Obviously, leadership intangibles, we know about that. They're through the roof. And certainly at the end of last season, once he started recovering from that calf injury and started to feel more comfortable, he became a little bit more mobile, would run with the football more. My issue is, if Dak is in an offense that isn't so 10 yards or less. I mean, Kellen Moore, I was watching, I can't remember who it was. I think it was Chris Sims of NBC Sports. He was breaking down film of the Cowboys offense in that Arizona loss. I'm telling you, Mike, it was 10-yard curl routes. That was it. There was no creativity to it. There was no catch the defense off guard. It was incredibly predictable.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how you can win a Super Bowl with that.
Yeah,
and
it was
so
very
I think
Barrett-esque, and that's exactly why why Cowboy fans wanted a coaching change a couple of years ago, and it was for literally one reason, because the offense was too simplistic, and that's it. If your offense is predictable, it doesn't survive in today's NFL. It just doesn't.
And people forget this, and I heard a Cowboy fan about a month ago point this out. I'm like, that's true. This still technically is a Jason Garrett offense.
It is.
Because if you remember when Mike McCarthy got hired and they retained Kellen Moore said really the only thing that changed was the verbiage. That was about it. The plays were the same. So we're still sort of seeing the cloud of Jason Garrett hanging over the team. And so, yes, I think Sean Payton would be a massive upgrade for the Cowboys. I do have some concerns about the offensive line. They're getting up there in age. Tyron Smith had a down year this year. I wouldn't be mad if they let Terrence Steele take that left tackle position. I thought he did a really good job in the snaps that he got. But I think for the Cowboys, at the end of the day, it's, can you build the secondary to better than what it is? Because I like Trayvon Diggs. I don't think he's in the Jalen Ramsey conversation. Guy gave up, I think, more yards than any corner in football this year. But
now, here's the thing about that. I agree with you. I don't think he's as good as Jalen Ramsey, but Jalen Ramsey gave up a very similar amount of yards this year and didn't have the interceptions. So I do want to point that out. I'm not saying you're wrong. I just do want to point that out.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Defending my guy.
Yeah, no, hey, listen. I think he's wildly athletic. At the end of the day, he's in a second year. He's still kind of learning, the cornerback position. He came to Alabama as a receiver, like his brother. Yeah. But again, there's more questions than answers, and I don't think those questions will ever get answered until there's a coaching change. So I think we're going to see 2021. Again, run back in 2022. They'll probably win 10 to 12 games, possibly. They will win the division, and that's about it. I don't see, even in a weaker NFC, I think you'll get either whoever's second in the NFC West will bounce Dallas out of the playoffs. That's what I think is going to happen when it's all said and done.
It is hard to argue that that next year could look a lot like this past year, because almost everything's the same, okay? And I will also say this, if they cut Amari Cooper and they cut DeMarcus Lawrence, I mean, that would be incredibly frustrating. Incredibly frustrating, because you're not even opening up that much cap. And what are you going to do with that money if you do cut them? I mean, Dak's numbers with Amari Cooper and without Amari Cooper, they are two different players.
Right.
They're two different players.
Yeah.
So you just can't do that. I know, I forget exactly who said it. I know where the rumor came from on 105.3 The Fan, which is a very reliable, Dallas radio station, but there's just no way that you can let those guys go. There's just no way.
I don't think they're going to let both go. I think that would be, incredibly irresponsible, as you mentioned. And I saw that Dak restructured his contract to free up some cap space. And so is that to keep guys like Michael Gallup, who's coming off a major knee injury, and Schultz and guys of that nature? Connor Williams can go wherever he wants, as long as it's not at the Dallas Metroplex, for all I care.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the importance for Dallas is, I think they definitely want to bring Randy Gregory back. I think they would like to bring Dalton Schultz back. But again, Dalton Schultz is going to be one of those guys where they're going to see where the market lies. And if somebody's going to overpay him, they'll just let him go, and they'll draft another kid in the 4th round, and they'll be just as good. It's one of those kind of situations. I think they want to bring back J-Ron Curse. I think the fact that Dan Quinn is back opens up a lot of possibilities to bring a lot of their defensive guys back, which, again, I don't necessarily think is a bad thing, because they had a good defense last year. Like I said, this roster is not really the problem. You can win a lot of games with this roster. You just need good decision-making, preparedness. Like, it's all like the stuff that you feel like should be a given. and it just isn't in their building right now.
Totally with you, lockstep. So let's move on to the two teams that still have the dreams of hoisting the Lombardi Trophy on Sunday night. Let's start first with the Rams. I said a week ago after they beat San Francisco, I said this is probably one of the most, we can talk about how Cincinnati's likable and Burrow. This is probably one of the most likable, great teams that I've seen probably in the last decade, because you got guys like Stafford who came from crappy Detroit, didn't win a playoff game there. You got guys like, Jalen Ramsey came from Jacksonville, led a great defense in 2017, but not much else outside of that. Right. You got Odell and, getting out of Cleveland, and look what he's done in Los Angeles, since he got there. And Von Miller came out of a great organization in Denver, but he wanted to get to a more winning situation. What's kind of your takeaway on the Rams, and especially Matt Stafford, the job that he's done, especially in the playoffs? Again, you talked about, Dak without Amari Cooper and with them as like different players. Stafford with the Lions and the Rams, obviously personnel-wise, it's very different. But what's sort of your takeaway in the Rams and what they've been able to do this season and in the playoffs?
Well, I don't like the Rams only because they always beat the Cowboys. So I'm just going to throw that out there first. So if I do have a little bit of bias, that's why. But here's the thing. I think the Rams have been very impressive, and they proved me wrong heavily this season because I thought they were one of the more overrated teams in football pretty much all season long. Because quite frankly, I mean, the Rams are the Cowboys with a better coach. Like, that's what they are. Okay. They didn't make the same amount of mistakes. I actually think the Cowboy roster is better, but if you look at their record against good teams, I mean, they're pretty similar. I mean, the Cowboys were pretty much 500 against teams that were over 500 this year. The Rams were about the same. They were about 3-5, 4-4. Like, the Rams were really beating bad teams and then struggling against good ones. So I think there's that to consider also. While that is all being said, Matt Stafford has been far from perfect for the Rams this year. He has not been amazing, but he has been very good. Okay. And even though he's leading the NFL in interceptions right now, because he throws a lot of picks. I mean, that offense is incredibly productive. He makes a lot of big plays. I mean, if you really want to talk about honesty right now, I mean, he really threw the game away, and Jaquiski Tartt kind of the interception. But again, that's neither here nor there. The fact is, though, is that it just feels like the Rams culture is almost a model of what the NFL is like, right? They take dying pieces from teams and implement them, and they just seem to fit seamlessly, right? Okay. Von Miller was washed in Denver. And has he been amazing with the Rams? No. But do you have to put a body on him? Absolutely. It opens up the defensive line completely. Okay. Jalen Ramsey was a loudmouth in Jacksonville. I forget he's on the team sometimes. Like, it's just, he's quiet as a mouse. And then OBJ, right? Baker Mayfield's better without him. Cleveland like, OBJ goes to the Rams, and it's just like, it looks like he's played there his whole career. I don't know. As much as I don't like them, because I don't, and me and my fiance feel the exact same way. My fiance is a Saints fan. She hates the Rams.
Oh, of course she hates the Rams. That's what happened a few years ago.
Despises the Rams. Their culture is immaculate.
Oh,
so
yes.
That's why they're here.
And at the end of the day, I have an unbelievable amount of respect for Stan Kroenke, the owner, because at the end of the day, what he has said, what their general manager, I'm blanking on his name. If it comes to mind, I'm losing it. But Les Snead, their general manager.
Yes.
What they've done in regards to, they're saying at the end of the day, Super Bowl 56 is in our home stadium. We're playing a tough division. We survived it. We're in the playoffs. We acquired Matthew Stafford. If we don't win the Super Bowl, you can't say we didn't give our best effort. You can't say that we didn't push all of our chips to the middle of the table, gave up just about every first-round draft pick.
They have.
I mean, they haven't spent a first-round pick since Jared Goff in 2016. I mean, it felt like almost a decade. And
they don't pick, I think, until like the 4th or 5th round in this year's draft. Like, they have no picks. They don't value draft picks. They value players. And if you know where to put those players and what to invest in with your draft picks in trades, then that's okay. you just, you got to make sure that these things work. And, I feel like if any other team did this, we'd be saying, like, fire the GM, clean house, like, just rebuild, trade him. I mean, the Seahawks did it, right? The Seahawks don't value draft picks either, but they can't draft. So, they traded for Jamal Adams. They traded for Dwayne Brown. I mean, they did the exact same thing, except we're saying, okay, they're a mess and the Rams are in the Super Bowl. So
that's it. The general manager is an A+, coach is an A++.
Yeah.
Although he makes decisions, those two challenges in that game, the NFC Championship game, I don't know what he's doing. I hope that, for their sake, it doesn't cost them the Super Bowl.
Coaches hiccup too.
They do, absolutely. Nobody's perfect. Now let's go to a team that is far from perfect, and that would be the Cincinnati Bengals. I was thinking the other day, I was thinking about some of the rosters. I wrote down on a sheet of paper. I think, okay, I don't think Cincinnati is the greatest roster, but where do they stack up in regards to the rest of the NFL?
Mm-hmm.
Mike, I think they're the 24th best roster in football, and they're in the Super Bowl. Maybe they're not that low.
Every single one?
Every single one.
Wow.
The offensive line, I actually hate watching them play. I mean, that game against the Titans was abysmal. It was one of the worst performances I've seen from an offensive line. But defensively, they're good. Pass rush is really good. But the secondary is kind of hit and miss. Again, I feel like the AFC Championship game was more about Mahomes. Decision making was not all that great. I didn't think it was a play calling issue. I thought it was a Patrick Mahomes issue, and it wasn't Cincinnati's defense playing incredible.
Yeah.
The fact that they are in the Super Bowl, I think if they pull this off against a far superior Rams team, can an argument be made that Joe Burrow is the best quarterback in football?
No, you can't say that now.
Okay.
However, I do think that he's in the conversation of, top 3, 4, 5. I think you can absolutely say that. Here's the thing with the Bengals, and this is what I think is the most impressive thing to me. And this is the most impressive thing about Joe Burrow too, is they have defied the logic of what the NFL is. They just have. They've defied the logic because you need, traditionally, right? You need an offensive line in order to have any success. The Bengals have quite possibly the worst offensive line in the NFL. Joe Burrow was sacked more than 50 times in the league this year. That led the league. I mean, what they've been able to do with a crappy offensive line is unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. And look, this proves all the people that said, oh, they should have picked Penny Sewell, right? It proves all those people wrong because Jamar Chase, you.
Yeah, I said it. Now, it's not that I didn't like Chase. I thought Chase was going to be really good.
Yeah.
But I thought, man, you got to keep your quarterback upright, especially after the injury he suffered last year.
Yeah, no. And listen, those people definitely had a point. They definitely did. But, I mean, we're seeing the value now of reuniting Joe Burrow with Jamar Chase. I mean, and here's the thing, too. I think that Jamar Chase made Joe Burrow comfortable. Like, I think it was, okay, now my guy's here. This is the guy that I threw 60 touchdowns with this guy on my team. He was my number one receiver at LSU when we quite possibly, at least in my eyes, had the best college football team of all time. Like that LSU team was another level of good. I just think that the Bengals are making it look like they're doing things the wrong way with personnel, but it doesn't matter because Joe Burrow is just that kind of guy. Okay. He's just like when he got drafted, and listen, I was putting him in the category of the Trevor Lawrence's, the Andrew Lucks, like these type of level of quarterback prospects. And people were saying like, Guido, I don't know. That's a lot of pressure to put on the kid. I'm just like, just wait, because winning is an incredibly valuable feature to have. Okay. It's not something that you are a product of. It is something that you are as a player. So, and Joe Burrow just is that. Joe Burrow's just a winner. So, listen, if you want my honest prediction, because I bet you're going to ask me, I'll get a head start on this.
Go ahead.
I think the Bengals win the Super Bowl because of that reason. Yes. I think that Aaron Donald and Von Miller and that defensive line of the Rams is going to make it tough. But look, the Titans have a good defensive line. The Raiders had a good defensive line. Kansas City's got a great defensive line. I mean, you're telling me the Rams is going to be the team that gets them? Listen, you get the feeling with Joe Burrow that I'm not losing.
No, I mean, he
must
gives
not know
that
me. I don't lose. Like that's
no, it doesn't. And I think he said something to that tune in college. Obviously, that year when I said on the show he had the greatest season of any college quarterback ever. And look, this is why I rely on you for draft stuff, because I wasn't horribly high on Joe Burrow in 2020. I look really smart today, but the point of all of it is for Cincinnati, like you said, they did everything wrong. But look, first of all, can I ask you, do you have a score for the Super Bowl? Do you have or at least, because I think
it'll be higher scoring. It'll be in the 38-35 neighborhood. It'll be 35-31 or something like that. Both teams will be in the 30s for me. But
okay,
man, that's a lot to ask. If you're a betting man, I probably wouldn't. Listen, I never like betting the Super Bowl just because, it's the Super Bowl. Throw everything you know about football out the window. You know what I mean? Just throw it all out. Anything can happen at this stage. So I'm not telling you to bet the over. So if you're telling me that I'm, telling you to bet something, I'm not.
Look, I do a segment on my show every Friday. If I were a betting man, and I got to admit, if I were a bet man, wouldn't touch this game. Would any playoff game the Bengals playing, wouldn't touch it. Yeah. Because the talent disparity is that great, and it has been every single round that they've been in. Yet somehow, some way that they find a way. But
yes.
I think what's special about Joe Burrow, listen, we've seen a lot of college quarterbacks come out, even college quarterbacks that, while they have been a part of a great program, they themselves have been pretty darn good. I think about Vince Young. I think about even Tua a couple years ago, at Alabama. When you talk about Joe being a winner, I don't think it's just that, because listen, we've seen quarterbacks come out of college from winning programs, Alabama, Ohio State, and they've been complete disasters in the NFL.
Sure.
I think people roll their eyes at this, but man, intangibles matter. And Joe Burrow instills a certain belief, and this is what franchise quarterbacks do.
Yeah.
This is why I think, maybe the Titans have some doubts about Ryan Tannehill and other teams with their quarterbacks.
Yeah.
When Joe Burrow walks in that locker room, there's not a single guy in that locker room that thinks they're going to lose the football game today. There's not one. And so that's the value of what he brings to the team. So 38-35 is your leaning?
I'll say, you know what? I'll revise it. I'll say 35-31 Bengals over the Rams in the Super Bowl.
35-31.
Which is, if you would have told me, that again, another point in what speaks to how good this is. If you would have told me that the Bengals were going to go to the Super Bowl this year,
I laughed in your face.
Right. Come on. I would have told you, not only they're not going to go to the Super Bowl, they're going to finish last place in their division.
Yes. Yes. They have the worst roster in the division, and their division, in my view, is the second best in football to the NFC West. But it is about as incredible. If he pulls this off, I think it'll be one of the greatest feats that any quarterback has pulled off in NFL history, and he's in his second year, which is scary.
Absolutely.
Mike, I love having you on the show. Appreciate you coming on, and good luck to your Cavs the rest of the NBA season. And hopefully my Warriors can stick the nail in the championship this year. But listen, can't wait for the Super Bowl. I'll put your prediction up there. I'm gonna have a list of other guests, and we'll see who comes the closest to hitting it on the money. But appreciate you coming on the show, my man.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Keep killing it.
Appreciate it. That is Mike Guido, as always, on Carving Up Live. Listen, he makes a lot of good points about Joe Burrow. Cincinnati has done everything wrong. And how many times, folks, have I said this on this show? You can screw up everything. If you get the franchise quarterback right, you can go as far as you want to go. If you're the Cincinnati Bengals and you've got probably the cheapest owner in the league, a team that outside of the last 2 years, let's be real, they don't draft horribly well. Zach Taylor, Mike likes Zach Taylor more than I do. I think he's a decent coach, right? He's not bad. Not at all. He's a coach in the Super Bowl for a reason. Like I said, he doesn't screw it up. He's not Mike McCarthy or some of these guys. Even Pete Carroll, to a certain degree, has screwed things up in Seattle. He doesn't do that. But he's not a Super Bowl head coach. We think about the Andy Reids, the Sean Paytons, Sean McVay, who's in the Super Bowl today. You got obviously Kyle Shanahan, who was almost there for the second time in 3 years. We think about obviously Belichick. We think of those guys. We don't think of Zach Taylor. But I'm telling you, I'll make my prediction on Friday. I'm leaning the Rams, but I picked up against the Bengals 3 times, and I'm telling you, that kid's got something different. We got a lot of superstars, superstar quarterbacks, as Mike and I talked about, Mahomes, Allen, the guys like that. There's something different about this kid. I don't think Mahomes could have pulled this off. Crap, Mahomes had the better roster and was at home and had an 18-point lead and lost to Joe Burrow. And Josh Allen lost to Mahomes. So, and I'm not necessarily implying that Burrow's better than those guys. I think he's better than Mahomes at this stage. But I think it's just incredible what he's pulled off in this stretch. And, for the Rams, let's just say Joe Burrow is a little different than Kyler Murray. And I like Kyler, but he's not this guy. Aaron Rodgers certainly in the postseason is a shell of himself, as I've said time and time again. And then you've got obviously Jimmy Garoppolo, who I like, but I don't think he's a franchise quarterback if you don't put the perfect, pieces around him. So it's going to be interesting, man. It's going to be very, very interesting to see where the Bengals go from here. And listen, we talk about Super Bowl hangovers. Usually Super Bowl hangovers ended up going to the losing team. So if Cincinnati wins, where do the Rams go? I think it's a fair question to ask. Maybe it's one I'll hit on Thursday when we have even more guests on the show. But one more topic to close that Carving Up Live. So going into yesterday, we had 3 head coaching spots open. Today, we have 1 head coaching spot open, and that is the New Orleans Saints, which, a couple weeks ago wasn't open at all. We had no idea Sean Payton was going to, step away from the Saints. But first, you had Mike McDaniel getting the job in Miami, replacing Brian Flores. Now, Mike McDaniel was the offensive coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers. How many plays did he call? I don't know. I think Kyle Shanahan runs that offense. But like I said, I'm not going to hold against a guy because he doesn't call plays. Doug Peterson didn't call plays in Kansas City, and he won a Super Bowl. Okay, Matt Nagy didn't call plays in Kansas City, and he got to the playoffs twice in 3 years with Mitch Trubisky. So I don't think that determines if you'll be a good coach or a bad coach. I'm not horribly high on the hire. The only thing I do like about it is that he is from the Shanahan tree. And you bring an offensive coach for Tua. But again, is he going to be a Sean McVay who lifted Jared Goff to heights that really none of us thought he was capable of reaching? And without Sean McVay, we see what Jared Goff is now in Detroit. Is that going to be the same case with Tua? I don't know. I highly doubt it. Now in Houston, Lovie Smith got the job. Lovie Smith, this is his 3rd head coaching job. He coached, obviously, in Chicago for years. Got the Bears to a Super Bowl, as a matter of fact, in his 2nd year there. Coached in Tampa Bay for 2 years. It was just totally a disaster, as the Bucs pretty much were, until Tom Brady showed up, which, that's kind of how that goes. But Lovie Smith gave him the job. I like Lovie. His college career at Illinois wasn't horribly successful. I think they only won like 17 games in a pretty long span. I think he was 17-30 something. So it was not in any stretch of the imagination a successful tenure for Lovie Smith in college. I did read the report that they wanted to hire Josh McCown, but because of the whole Brian Flores lawsuit and things of that nature, they went with Lovie Smith. This feels once again like, okay, we're giving another job just like we did with David Culley last year. We're giving a job to a black coach. Now, granted, Lovie Smith is far more qualified than David Culley. He's more head coach material than David Culley is. But he's in a bad situation in Houston. It's about as poorly run a franchise as there is. I mean, I like Davis Mills. Y'all know I like Davis Mills more than Mac Jones out of a draft. And Houston has some guys, Rex Burkhead and Brandon Cooks, and they got some nice players. Their defense was no slouch. But as a roster, the offensive line is awful. The tight end group is below average. And the secondary can get burned at times. And they're in a bad division too. But the best case scenario for Houston is 3rd. And I don't even think they're going to get there. I think the addition of Doug Peterson in Jacksonville is, I love the Doug Peterson hire. For Trevor Lawrence, getting him an offensive coach who got Nick Foles, not Nick Foles didn't win the Super Bowl. He wasn't one of these Brad Johnsons or Trent Dilfers, guys who came in and got to the Super Bowl and was just kind of part of the effort. No, Nick Foles led the effort. He was the Super Bowl MVP for crying out loud. Went toe-to-toe with the great Tom Brady. And that's who you give Trevor Lawrence. So I think it's a great hire for Jacksonville. Now they're not going to make the playoffs right off the bat, I would think, although none of us thought the Bengals would get to the Super Bowl, so who knows? But I think at the end of the day, for Houston, you're darn sure not finishing higher than Indianapolis or Tennessee. That we do know. And I think Jacksonville's going in a different direction. I think Houston is going to become the AFC version of Detroit, to be honest with you. I mean, they really are, because you think about both franchises, how many times have both of them hired New England assistants to either be their head coaches or New England guys to run their front office? You got Easterby, and then you got guys like that. So again, I don't think the hire works at all. I think few hires work in Houston. This is why I said, like, Brian Flores, please, as a fan of yours, please don't go to Houston. It didn't work in Miami, and Miami's not, they're not great. They're not run horribly well. They're not run awfully as bad as Houston. And they fired you out of Miami. So don't go to Houston. I don't care if you're friends with the general manager. So I'm happy Flores didn't go there. I doubt he gets the Saints job. I'd like to see Eric Bieniemy get the job there and hopefully get himself a franchise quarterback and bring the Saints back. But I'm meh on both hires. I think I like the McDaniel hire a little more than I do the Lovie Smith hire. But I mean, it felt like the Lovie Smith hire was simply for legal purposes, just so they wouldn't make themselves look bad, which they've already done that a numerous amount of times. So just because they're hiring a black coach isn't going to help that. I'm happy for Lovie. I really like Lovie. I think he's a good head coach, but I think you're throwing in Houston. You're setting him up for failure, just like you did with David Culley a year ago. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. But the Saints job is open. Plenty of candidates with an opportunity. Again, love to see Eric Bieniemy get a shot. I really, really would. I like Eric Bieniemy a lot, and I think he has a chance to be a really good head coach. All Andy Reid, not all, but most Andy Reid assistants do pan out in the NFL. That's why I think next year Matt Nagy's going to get a job. I think Matt Nagy can really coach a lot. You got Mitch Trubisky to the playoffs. So that's my takeaway on that. But I'd like to see Eric Bieniemy get the job in New Orleans, but I'm sort of lukewarm on the Miami hire and on the Houston hire. So that's my takeaways on that. With that said, that is all the time we have for on today's show. Appreciate everybody stopping by. As always, sorry for the first 8 minutes. I'll see if I can get that edited out for, again, if you're watching this at a later day, you're probably thinking, what the heck is Bryson talking about? But we had to mute my man, John Rivera, as always, coming in the clutch, as he always does. He texted me. He said, Bryson, you're on mute. What are you doing? He didn't say that exactly, but I'm like, oh, crap. I got to unmute my microphone. But appreciate that, John, and appreciate everybody for hanging in there through that technical difficulty. Appreciate Mike Guido coming on the show, as always. He's a great guest. I love having him, especially during the NFL and NBA draft. He's sort of I think even he would tell you, he's kind of a draft nerd. So certainly once we approach the NFL draft, you'll see him a lot more in Carving It Up Live, and we'll continue to do that. So appreciate everybody stopping by the show. Be sure to catch Carving It Up Live on Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time on Facebook Live, YouTube, and on Twitter. If you're on YouTube, by the way, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Helps the channel grow exponentially. And also, if you're listening to the Carving It Up podcast, we appreciate that as well. You've been listening on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast, Anchor, as well as wherever you listen to your podcast. Have a great week, everybody. Looking forward to Super Bowl opening night. Be safe out there. God bless y'all. Peace out. I'm done. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube. Be sure to click that big red subscribe button and go check out the other clips and full shows of Carving It Up Live. Have a blessed day.